Hello everybody, welcome to your first lesson of this week, your first home lesson of this week. I haven't done a lesson for every day this week because the two lessons you do in school, those of you that are coming to school, will be different to the lessons online this week. It will be more like English. And the reason for that is because we're going to be using protractors and not all of you may have a protractor at home. So I thought that was something that was better to do in school. So like with English, I would like you to do the 3 days of maths on whichever 3 days you are not in school. So you'll either be doing day 1 on Wednesday or you'll be doing day 1 on Monday. Okay, so day 1 is going to be about calculating missing angles on right angles and straight lines. So by that I mean finding part of the whole, finding part of the whole angle if we already know some of it. That will all become clear as we go through. So first of all, let's look at what we already know about right angles and straight lines. A couple of things we already know. On a right angle, the two lines are perpendicular, if you remember that word from last week, which means they meet at a right angle. So this line and this line are perpendicular. They meet at a right angle. We also know that when it's a right angle, we show this by putting a little square in the corner rather than a curve. And we also know that a right angle is measured at 90 degrees exactly. Otherwise, it is not a right angle. Anything smaller than a right angle is an acute angle, and anything between a right angle and a straight line is an obtuse angle. If it's bigger than a straight line, it's called a reflex angle. So that's what we know about a right angle, and don't forget it can be all different orientations. So here you can see it's not quite horizontal and vertical, but we can twist this right angle whatever way we want to, but as long as those two lines are still perpendicular and still have 90 degrees between them, it is still a right angle. You can have the point at the top, you could have the point at the bottom, wherever. By the point, of course, I mean the vertex, the corner. Okay, what do we know about a straight line? A straight line we show with a curve rather than a square, because a square is only for a right angle. It is measured at 180 degrees, which is actually double 90 because it is made up of two right angles. So if we put two right angles added together, we would have a straight line. Sorry about my wobbly lines. Okay, so that's our straight line. It's 180 and it's half of a full turn. And a full turn, if you remember, is double 180, 360 degrees. Okay, so let's look at this right angle here. What do we know and how can we calculate the missing angle? Well, what do I already know? I know that it will be 90 degrees in total, and I know it's a right angle because it shows me with the square. I know that this angle has been divided into two, but they're not equal. These two parts are not equal, and I know that because I know half of 90 degrees is 45 degrees. So if they were two equal, this would be 45, but it's not. So we've got to work out how we can calculate the missing angle. And we're going to do that on a bar model. So on our bar model, we're going to think about the total of the angle, which is 90 degrees. And we already know one part of the 90 degrees, which is 67. So I'm left by finding out this part here. So what I've essentially got here is 67 add something equals 90. So I've got to find out this missing number. When you've got a missing number here, the easiest way to do that is subtract. So what you'd actually want to do is 90 take away 67, and that will equal our missing number. And what you could do to help yourself with that is start at where could we start? We could start at 67 and work our way up to 90, and then we could do jumps. Jump of 10 would get me to 77. Jump of 10 would get me to 87, and then I've got a jump of 3 to get me to 90. So my answer would be 23. So I can now fill in all these sections as 23. So my missing angle is 23 degrees. And just to double check that, 60 and 20 is 80, plus the 7 and the 3, which makes 10. Add that to the 80, that's 90. Now, some of you would just be able to work this out in your head, and that's great. That's fine if that's how you can do it. Some of you may have done this mentally in your head, absolutely fine. But you can also draw it pictorially like this. And the bar model here is just to show me what my calculation is. So when you've got a missing number here, like we did, you've got to do that subtraction to find it out, or counting on, like we did. So it's actually sort of finding the difference there. Okay, so that's a right angle. What about this one? What can you tell me about this first image? If it's made up of 2 right angles, what's the total value? Now, we know this because I said this at the beginning. If you remember, right back when we were looking at what we know about angles, we know that 2 right angles is 2 times 90, so it's 180. I've got 90 degrees here, I've got 90 degrees here, and I know that 9 times 2 is 18. So I just make, because it's 90 times 2, I make my answer 10 times bigger by moving the digits one place to the left and putting that placeholder on. So I've made them 10 times bigger, so 90 times 2 is 180, or 90 at 90. So I know that about my straight line. What's the same and what's different here? Well, what's the same is that both the angles are still on a straight line. We know that we're looking at angles because they've got curves. So we know something that's the same is that they will total 180 degrees. What's different is that they are not right angles. So that means they're not going to be 90 each. Now, at the moment, other than knowing that the total is 180, I can't work out these angles, the value of them, because I need to know one in order to work out the other. I could estimate, but I couldn't work it out for definite. So let's have a look then at this angle again, but let's give one of them a value. So here it says, if the smaller angle is 40 degrees, let's write that in straight away, what would the larger angle be, and how would you know? Again, let's use a bar model. The total is not 90 this time, the total will be 180. I know part of that is 40, but I need to know the other part. You might want to think of it as a cherry diagram as well. Those of you that are more familiar with cherry diagrams, which would look like that, you could think of it like that. So we're trying to find this missing number. So again, our calculation is 40 add something equals 180, or in other words, 180 minus 40 equals our blank number. Now, I'm not even going to do a diagram this time because I know that 80 take away 40 is 40, because it's half. 40 is half of 80. So if I take away that 40 from the 80, I'm left with 40, and then I've still got the 100 here. So 180 take away 40 is 140. And I can also see in the diagram, I can use a bit of common sense and see that actually this angle is going to be a lot bigger than this angle. I can also see that this angle is obtuse, so it will be bigger than 90, whereas this angle is acute, so it will be smaller than 90. And although it might not be absolutely to scale, so if I measured this angle, it may not be exactly 40 degrees, it's going to be a rough representation of it. So I can see that, yeah, that's about 40. And actually, because, as I said earlier, I know that 45 degrees is half a right angle. I mean, that's quite close to being half a right angle. So it's a good check as well there, just to see if I'm on the right lines. Okay, let's have a look at this one. Again, our total is 180 because it's on a straight line. Part of our angle, our total, is 104. So I've got to work out this missing angle. So I've got to then think about 180 minus 104. Again, I could draw a diagram, but I'm actually going to do this in my head. I'm going to take the 100 away, which gives me 80, and then take the 4 away, which would give me 76. You can do that however you would find that easier. So my missing angle is 76 degrees. And I can then go back and check and add those two together to make sure they add up to 180. Okay, this one's a little bit trickier because you've got two angles that are given to you and you have one missing. So our total, 180 again, we're still working with a straight line, so it's still going to be 180. And this time I need to split my bar model into 3 sections. I know 94 and I know 38. But we've got to work out this one here. Now there are a couple of ways that you could do this one. You could either do 180, take away 94, take away 38 to get your answer. Or you could first of all add together 94 and 38, get the total from that, which would be, I'm going to just put it as a question mark for now, and then take that away from 180. Either way, you'll get the right answer. So just take a second, pause the video if you need to, take a second and work out the answer. By either method, you can start with 180 and take both numbers away, or add both numbers together first and then take it away from 180. So just pause the video and take a second to answer that. Okay, I went with this method down here. I added these two numbers together and I got to 132. I then did 180 minus my 132 and I got to 48. So I know that this missing angle is 48. I hope you got the same answer as me. I have been known to get things wrong, of course. Okay, something you might see in a question is asking you to find the value of x. All that means is one of the angles has been labelled as x and we want you to find out how much it's worth. So don't get thrown when you see x. It just means it's the same as a question mark. The value of question mark is, it's just used, the letter x is often used in maths, especially in algebra, to represent a number. It's in its place. It's in the place of a number. And in year 6, you will be learning more about algebra. But for the moment, all you need to know is that x is in the place of a number. And it wants you to find out what that number is. Okay, so have a look at this one again. Do we know one angle or do we know two? I can only see one number here. So with my 180, I know 35 of it. But how am I going to work out x when the middle angle hasn't been labelled? Unless you can see something. Can you spot anything that will tell you how much this angle is worth? Did you see the square? Because there's a square, that means this angle is a right angle. So it will be worth 90 degrees. Look out for sneaky things like that. Okay. So I know my 90, I know my 35. Now there's a question down here. Is there more than one way of finding the solution? And what that means is what we did last time. So you could either add together 90 and 35 and subtract it from 180, or you could start with your 180, subtract 90, subtract 35. Or there's actually a third way. Do you remember that two straight lines are two lots of 90 added together? Now, one of those lots of 90 we don't need to worry about because it's there, which means these two angles added together must equal 90 because 90 of it's already been dealt with. So as well as this bar model, what might be easier is just to work out what goes with 35 to make 90. Now, if I take 30 away from 90, I get 60. And if I take 5 away from that, I get 55. So I think that angle there is 55. Now that's the last way I've just shown you is probably the quickest way. You can just get rid of the 90 straight away and know you've only got 90 left. Okay, you have got a sheet to do. You don't need a printer for it because you can just look at it on the screen and write the answers out. It starts with asking you questions about right angles. And so don't forget they will total 90 degrees. And then it moves on to asking you about straight lines. And remember, they total 180 degrees, two lots of right angles. They may ask you the value of x. That just means the missing angle. Sometimes there might just be one line. Sometimes there might be a second line. And don't forget to look out for those tricksy ones like the ones we've just done, where it shows you that there's actually a right angle within the straight line. So look out for those ones as well. Tomorrow, whatever tomorrow may be for you, so that will either be Tuesday or Thursday, you're going to be doing a very similar activity to this, but rather than finding missing angles on a right angle or a straight line, you'll be finding right angles around a point, which means a full turn. So that will be coming up tomorrow. Okay, have a go at the sheet, have fun, and I will see you next time you're in school. Bye-bye, everyone.